What does that look like if I start saying no to a couple of different client segments that I'm no longer going to serve? What if I stop offering these kind of products? What business model am I really focusing on? And only after you have that clarity, go and implement EOS, which is a fantastic system, but only when you have that financial clarity and the strategic clarity comes the operational clarity.
Welcome to the Profit Answer Man podcast. We believe the purpose of business is to make lots of money. We'll show you how to scale and grow your profit and cash flow, all while working less. We're a big fan of the ELF model: easy, lucrative, and fun. If you're the backbone of America, you deserve to be well rewarded for that. Listen in to see how other business owners are doing it and how to maximize your profit and cash flow. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Yaron Gaon. It's great to have you join us, Ted.
It's great being here. Thank you for having me.
Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Yarin. I'm originally from Israel. I'm a serial entrepreneur, started several companies. I'm currently in my fourth one. Last one became the largest e-commerce platform for military goods back home in Israel, which I sold. I exited, moved to the US, finished my MBA, did my last semester as an exchange student at Kellogg, joined a VC as an entrepreneur in residence, which is a very fancy way to say that I work with companies that ran out of money. So basically, the fund invested in startups, and some of them ran out of money, and they sent me there to turn them around. That's what I did. I'm a mentor at the University of Chicago. I used to be a mentor at SCORE, mentored a little bit over 400 founders the last 6-7 years. About 3 years ago, I quit to start Fractional Partners because I wanted to help companies grow more profitably. That's what I do now with the concept of planning, but we'll talk about this in a moment. It's a little bit about me. I'm married. I have a 2-year-old. I live in Salt Lake City, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Rocky.
You're most welcome. We're going to talk about my favorite topic, how to have more cash and more profit.
That's right.
You also are familiar with Profit First.
Correct.
So what kind of is it that you like about Profit First? What brought you into that?
So I am a very linear thinker, and I love processes and systems. Mike Moskovich, I read a lot of his books. Profit First really aligned with me because it's a system and it's a mental accounting system, really. So I was really drawn to the way that I don't want to say you manage your cash flow through your bank account, but the concept of having different pots for different situations. And I'm a very loss aversion individual, so I don't like to spend a lot of money on a specific item. So when I have these pots, it helps me navigate life. And I also do it in my personal account as well as my business account. I have my car account and I have my healthcare account, and I have what I call I don't want to say it, but like it's a Hail Mary account when things like for things you don't want to pay for but need to be paid for. I love that because you allocate this on a monthly basis, then you have a little pot to draw from when needed. Yeah.
That was the reason I was attracted to Profit First. It's the way I was always doing my personal finances for years. You create the different pots. Each one has a reason. You send money to do the work there, and then it takes the emotion out of using that pot. And I think for business owners, especially business owners who don't like to pay themselves until last, it takes that emotion away and it gives them permission to pay themselves. And it allows that to occur. I, like you, am a systems thinker. I didn't realize how out of the ordinary that was. I just thought most people think like that, but I have found that that is not the case. Is that what you've experienced?
Isn't this the beauty of well-designed systems, right? They feel intuitive and they feel like natural and organic, but then you step out and you see, well, that's not how most people think. Most people don't think in systems, period. And then most systems are not frictionless. Another period. So when you find one, that's why we're talking about. That's why this caught on. Well deserved, I think. One of his best. I read a lot of his books. One of his more profound thought experiments.
It's very practical. And the tagline is how to turn your business from a cash-eating monster to a money-making machine, a money-making system. And that's what I ask business owners. I'm like, what's the purpose of your business? They give me all these answers. I go, no, the purpose of your business is very simple. It is to make money. Because if it doesn't make money, none of those things you mentioned are possible. You can't hire people. You can't do payroll. You can't make your community better. You can't have your dreams come true. When you have money, all those things are solvable now, and it makes it a lot easier to do that. You like to help people make money and increase profit. So how do you do that?
Well, I do like to make money, and I do like to help people make money. So here's how I do. Here's what I found after working with hundred. We were talking about this before we started recording. We talked about my involvement with SCORE and mentoring. I saw something really interesting. I saw that there is a stage in businesses where a lot of companies get stuck and they actually increase revenue but become less profitable. It's a really interesting dynamic because you have more sales, business is growing, but bottom line is actually shrinking or staying stagnant. And as I delved into this, I found something really interesting. I found there's this breed of businesses that have found some initial success. Let's call it like anywhere between $1 and $2, $3, $4 million, and stuff start to break and profit becomes to shrink. And I asked myself, so why does it happen? And I'm curious if you found the same, if you got to the same conclusion. What I found is these businesses try to grow by applying their model from the beginning. They try to grow by addition. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So as you start a business, start from zero, all you do is add stuff. You try stuff, you add stuff, more clients, more products, more revenue stream. You try to see what works, what sticks in the marketplace. So you just grow by add. It's called growth by addition. There comes a time where business grows to a point of $2, $3, $4, $5 million, where growth by addition now becomes very, very complex because right now you're trying to grow by adding more stuff. As you add more stuff, things become more complex. Things becomes harder. And not just this, you're growing every part of the business. But as you know, not every part of the business is as profitable. So profit is like the average of all of your activities, right? Some of them add a lot to the bottom line. Some of them detract from the bottom line. But what companies try to do is they try to grow everything. And by growing everything, they're actually diluting their profit. Before I continue, does that make sense so far?
It does. And I have two comments on that. When you're a small business owner, right? Most of the knowledge of how to do the business is in the business owner's head. So they're running the business, they're doing everything. Very simple. Then they grow a little bit. Now they put some people in, but they're working very closely with the people. So when the people have a problem, the business owner solves it by taking what's out of their head and telling them, not in a system, not in a process, but through too much communication and putting out fires.
Sure.
You get to the 2 million mark, and now you have another layer of people. And that layer of people now has to talk to the mid layer of people that never got taught the system. Now it comes back to the owner who's firefighting like crazy, or it may not even come back. And so now we have people 2 steps out doing all kinds of crazy stuff with zero control or processes. So little things that might not be a big deal when we do it 10 times are now being done 100 times a day. And we're creating disaster. So that's the way I see it from my standpoint.
Yeah.
And the second thing is there's a book behind me called Islands of Profit in a Sea of Red Ink. This book was written about Fortune 500 companies, and it said the exact same thing you did. 20% of what they do, Pareto principle, same principle in profit first, produces 80% of the results, which means 20% of your work produces 80% of the profit. 80% of what you do is essentially useless.
Correct.
Figure it out. Back to you.
But that's exactly the point, right? It's all about, so you've built enough mass at a $2, $3 million business that there is enough to look at, right? At a $200,000 business, it's very hard to distinguish what contributes profit and what doesn't contribute profit. But at a $3 million business, you can start identifying different clear revenue streams or different segments of clients or different lines of products. And then there's a shift that needs to happen, but doesn't happen most of the time. The shift is I need to start growing by subtracting and not growing by addition. So there's need to be some point where a company needs to pause, look at their P&L, look at their business and decide, okay, from everything that I built so far, what am I doubling down on? What is the segment, line of products, core capabilities, strategic advantages? What am I taking from everything that I've built and learned and narrowing down so I can take that super profitable center and then scale that center instead of scaling a very wide business with multiple line of product that some of them are okay, some of them are not. It's just a different mindset. It's a shift that needs to happen at a certain stage. I want to touch on, so you talked about systems and processes. I want to touch on this. And I want to see if you agree or disagree with my statement. So I'm a big fan of EOS, right? I implemented EOS. Yeah, I know profit first, and I see traction in the back. So I implemented EOS in all of my portfolio companies that I work with. Here's what I found. EOS is an executional system, right? It's called an operational entrepreneur operating system. Operating is the key word there. And what most companies feel, or this is my observation. So you get to that $3 million stage, $2 million stage, things start to break, or there's tension that starts to happen. Waste, tension, is friction. And what a lot of companies do is they try to fix that tension with cleaning their operation. Right? Let's put a system in place. Let's put EOS. Let's put process. Here's the caveat why I feel like that's not the problem. So to push back, please. At $2-3 million, you have proven that you can execute, right? You have proven that you can sell. You have proven that there is product market fit to an extent. It might not be perfect. It might not be smooth, but you have proven you can make stuff happen. The challenge is that EOS is an executional system. It makes sure everybody's rowing in the same direction, but it doesn't make sure you're rowing in the right direction. It's not a strategic system. It assumes you know your customer, you know what you want to double down on. You have a super clear vision, which is usually wrong, but it assumes you know where you're building. And then what it does, it makes sure there's accountability and there's a scorecard, everybody's rowing in the same direction. But I found that at this stage, the challenge is not that they are rowing in different directions. We can fix this, is they're not really sure on what they're building, what they're doubling down on. What segment, what product, what version of this business am I truly building? And the communication gaps you mentioned at the beginning, where the employees at the bottom don't know what the founder, it's not a process in my mind. A lot of time the founder doesn't know exactly what they're building. So it's not something that I can solve with the process of communication. It's something I need to solve at the highest level with what exactly is our plan? What are we doing here? From everything that worked so far, what am I actually scaling and what am I saying no to and thinking and killing in my business? Pause, because this is a lot.
We've come up with a new tagline. Work less, make more, have fun.
Yes.
That's the goal. When I talk to the EOS integrators, I go, I love your EOS system. I love your dashboards. Do you know what's missing? And they say, what? I go, a financial dashboard.
Aha. EOS does not have a financial component at all. Neither
Not
is
at all.
One. Correct.
And so when I work with the EOS integrators, they love the fact that I bring financial discipline and awareness to the situation. And they answer the question you're talking about. Where is the money coming from? And now we can set our strategy not by what we feel in our gut, but what the math of our specific business says and where we are getting the most money for the least effort that we enjoy with the clients we like and have fun.
Right? It's almost like, so in my framework, operations is the end. It starts with financial clarity, basically understanding, like you said, where is not really money, but where is profit coming from? Because profit and revenue are very different. It's super
Correct.
easy to identify where revenue is coming from. Not so easy to identify where profit is coming from. So step one, where is profit coming from and what levers can I pull to increase or change it, right? It's a mathematical equation. Where would I want to direct effort into focusing on this line of product, focusing on this specific segment? Is it about increasing conversion or increasing cost of acquisition? Where in my machine do I want to apply effort to give you the best ROI? So that's step one. And then step two is, what does that mean for my business model? So you talked about have fun. So as you learn more about what the finance are telling you, then the second question is, okay, so what business am I building with that in mind? What does that look like if I start saying no to a couple of different client segments that I'm no longer going to serve? What if I stop offering these kind of products? What business model am I really focusing on? And only after you have that clarity, go and implement EOS, which is a fantastic system. But only when you have that financial clarity and the strategic clarity comes the operational clarity.
So we're actually creating a whole bunch of new content that's all going on YouTube, which is different than not everyone listens to this on YouTube or even knows about it. We break down the business into 3 drivers. The first driver is what everybody knows, driving revenue, which you talked about. The other 2 drivers are the ones they don't understand. And the second driver is driving profit. The third driver is driving cash flow, because you can have revenue, you can have profit, and you can have 0 cash.
Correct.
And within each of those 3 drivers, we make it simple. We've got 5 to 6 levers. And just as you said, when you look at the entire model as one, because they all connect, and you realize this lever has the maximum return for the little bit of change. And it's a little bit of change. These are not like 10x changes. These are, hey, how do I make small tweaks and get dramatic results? And so we've actually created a calculator, just like you have, that we give away to make it easy for people to find the leaks and say, this is the change that I need to make. So I totally agree with what you're saying. We each have our own way of doing it, which is fine. We can both have pie. You like apple, I like cherry. Find the one you like, use it. Go make money, please.
Correct. So Rocky, let me ask you a question. So I'm an investor. So a little bit of context. So I built this system that sits on top of EOS, and basically is the planning system that sits on before EOS is being implemented. Basically, you figure out on your, it's called the clarity playbook. And the idea, if you have clarity, things flow. So if you have clarity on what drives profits and what is your strategy, well, then only then what are you going to execute in the next 90 days? That's the missing piece. So I wanted to ask you a question, because I built this system for me as an investor coming into my own company. And the idea here is I invest in a company and I want to make it more profitable. How do I make them more profitable in a systematic way? So I found that by installing this system and helping them focus and answer these questions, I can help them become more profitable. But that assumes that I invest in them and then deploy the system. I'm curious from your perspective. I found that a lot of founders and owners have a hard time stopping to do the work. So you have the systems, you have the tools, the knowledge exists. What I found is that it's very hard for business owners to just almost like mechanically stop, say, I'm going to stop for a moment. Let's do some analysis. Let's do some rethinking and then grow. Because what did you find is that moment where they say, I don't want to keep doing this like that. There's almost like this emotional event or a trigger point that without this, all of our conversations are purely theoretical, right?
You know when people stop drinking?
Rock bottom.
Yeah. So the business owner, unfortunately, and I'm trying to figure out how not to wait till then.
Because it's too late. It's just crisis management at that time.
And they do it when they can't make payroll next week. That's when but the problem at that moment, and let's just talk about the key. It's maybe they get to there where I can't make payroll next week. Maybe they've been doing this for 10 years. They've been stuck at similar revenue things and they're tired, right? They're working too much. They keep working more and nothing changes. Some event unique to them is when that happens. And that's when they're finally willing to change. It would be wonderful if we could catch them sooner. I'm not sure how to do that per se. What I have been doing is I've been grabbing very, very young business owners who are willing to listen, and we're catching them early and we're just setting them on the right path so that they never go through the misery. But I don't know how you get people to change or be willing to. Honestly, I think some of these people are just allergic to cash.
It's a grapple with this, because so here's my public announcement. If you are running a business and you are doing EOS, next time you do quarterly planning, instead of having it one day, have 3 days of quarterly planning. Stop for a moment. Analyze your P&L. Align on the key strategic questions. I hear you nod. They don't. But then when they get to you without paying, here's the challenge, Rocky. When they get to the point where they can't pay payroll, they are now hyper-focused on survival and like tactical immediate solutions. And tactical immediate solutions are low ROI a lot of times. The big ROI comes from longer decisions or a little bit more profound decision that you need some breadth and depth to actually pursue. That's where the most profit is coming from. Otherwise, you're just looking for scraps, no?
Here's what tell me if I'm wrong.
Please.
I agree with the 3-day meeting, but here's the problem. The business owner, more often than not, does not know how to read the P&L. It's Greek.
Correct.
Okay. To you and me, it's easy. To them, it's Greek. The EOS implementer that's in the room who's running the session for them, maybe they've brought in somebody from the outside or even a business coach. They look at the P&L and go, you're profitable or you're not profitable. They might have two insights, but they themselves don't really truly understand it. So then they call their CPA and their CPA says, cut costs. Okay. And they call their bookkeeper and the bookkeeper says, well, I put the stuff where I'm supposed to put it. Now, sometimes one of those people out of those four happens to understand finance and they go, all right, let's dig in. The chances of that are still rare. More often than not, we have four people in an all-day meeting and none of them understand Greek.
Yeah.
So have you found different than that?
Yes and no. So I work with companies that are already at $2-3 million stage. So the level of the level of sophistication is slightly more. But I agree. People don't know how to read. Let me rephrase. It's not that they don't know how to read. People don't know how to make meaning of the numbers that are presented to them. And the people around them definitely don't know how to make, because none of them usually built a business, right? Your CPA didn't build a business, maybe a consulting, your bookkeeper. They're not entrepreneurs. They're not approaching this from a business owner / investor mindset. Their job is to clean the numbers, and the CPA job is to make sure you pay taxes. The bookkeeper job is to make sure everything is categorized correctly. It's not a business lens that they apply.
And I agree with you, but I think part of the problem is, how does everyone look at their numbers? They get accounting reports, a P&L and a balance sheet.
Yeah.
Which neither are presented in the way to do what you just said we need to do. They don't show you the answers because they're buried or they're not clear. And so unless you can take that data and reinterpret it through the right lens, which maybe I have not found accounting reports or systems that do that for business owners. What I do is I take all that data and I create a custom dashboard for that business along with their marketing systems data. And we put everything on one page in a way that makes sense for that specific business. But I find that's a rarity. You tell me.
So agree. Let me ask you one more question that I'll give you. Do you believe that once they have that clarity, they can start making smarter decisions?
Yes, and more. If the business owner can see it and understand it, then when you point it out to them and you go, hey, and I'll give you a classic example. And it's funny because the person I'm going to talk about ran an accounting and CFO business. And I was looking at his numbers.
The irony.
Okay, the irony. He said, I need more leads.
Always the number one problem. I need more leads.
I need more leads. He knew his conversion rate. It was 20%. And so I looked at him and I go, you don't need more leads. Mm-hmm. You need a better conversion rate. If you went from 20 to 40%, you would immediately double your business. Now, I had the wisdom to know that. Yeah. He still argued with me. That's okay. But the point is, if I can say that, or if that business owner can understand that, now, if he knows I got to get from 20 to 40%, and he knows that that's his goal, absolutely, he can figure that out. No doubt about it.
Exactly. You're touching on my entire thesis, right? Business owners, a lot of them can execute. They can make stuff happen. The challenge is they don't know what to focus on with confidence. So to your point, same thing with the financial. P&L is only one component of the story, your financial story. And second, much like yourself, it needs to be put in context. So going back to the Clarity Playbook, which is the planning system that I built, which is free, by the way, it's free and publicly open, and founders can use it. The idea here is in step one is to create the financial clarity canvas. Saying like much like yourself, but instead of a dashboard, it's a static thing that basically explain, okay, what is the true P&L? Even then P&L, to extract profit, you have to clean the P&L because there's a lot of junk expenses that gets there. If you put junk expenses in your P&L, you're not going to be able to make smart decisions.
Can we define what you call a junk expense?
Personal expenses that flow into your P&L look great from the IRS perspective because you pay less taxes, but do not allow you to make smart financial decisions because you are mudding your information. You have to almost like you have to clean this back up and bring it like to what we call adjusted EBITDA or adjusted profit, which is what would have been if you haven't put that car that has nothing to do with the business on the, what is the true? And one more sentence, when they come to sell the business, that's the first thing a buyer would do is to clean all your junk. And you're actually decreasing the value of your business by adding all that stuff. You're treating it as like an amateuristic business. I don't know how else to say it.
So I call that, it's a business expense.
Ha.
And what we do is somewhere in the P&L, we create a line that we all know, whatever it's called. In reality, that is the, it's a business expense line. And so when I create their dashboard, it shows their profit without the and then below it, it says, and it says, this year you spent 140 grand on was it worth it? And owners are like, I didn't realize that. But that's how we clean it up. And profit first, all of the should come out of the owner's pay account because it's really owner's pay. So now when you think you're not making money, now you realize, hey, the reason my salary is so low is because I spent it on And so you get a truer picture. And so they have more clarity from that.
Clarity plus a strong team that can execute equals profit. And I feel like, so my whole thing is like, if we can help business owners get clarity on specific parts of their business and specific with me, it's specific questions that were never asked, but if are now asked and articulated, create clarity, profit flows. If you can take strong companies that have product that people love and team that can execute on that service, and you can just help them kind of focus on what area is best worth my effort. The byproduct is increased profit, and the byproduct of doing the activity of focusing is increased exit multiple, meaning when you want to sell, your company would be more valuable because the less risk you can attach to your company, right? The more proactive you are, the more systems and processes and planning and being proactive, the higher the multiple you get when you decide to sell. So the less risky you are, and the flip side of it is the higher multiples. There's no magic formula. This is the formula.
Oh, I agree with you totally. People don't realize, when you put the family member on payroll and you're paying them 50 grand, if you get a 6 multiple on exit, you just lost 300 grand on top of the 50 you're paying them. Question for you. When we first started, you said that you were working and going into startups when they hit the point where they were in trouble and you were turning them around. What were the mistakes or what were they doing incorrectly that got them to that point, and what did you do to turn them around?
Yeah. So a lot of different companies, a lot of different mistakes. Biggest mistake is they allocated capital inefficiently. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Unlike bootstrap businesses, which might be a lot of our listeners today, startups get cash, and they get a lot of cash, and they get cash that is not theirs. So a lot of them don't operate from a profit first mentality. They work from, I'm trying to grow at any cost, and I have some money to play with. I'm going to play with it. And they were just making, I know, I can see you. They made unprofitable decisions without product market fit, meaning in simple terms that they spent money without conviction that if they give $1, they're going to get $1 plus X. They were gambling with other people's money without the conviction that there's a machine that is tight enough to produce a profit. Very easy way to lose a lot of money and get into a lot of trouble. The problem or the challenge was a lot of time it wasn't fine. The problem is that they called me too late. And this is going back to the trigger point, right? I got in when they were already ran out of money. When you run out of money, you are in survival mode and you're trying to pick up cash from it. It's about cutting costs because it's generating income or generating better type of income takes time and also take capital to do so. You need to spend some money. If you are already in a point where you can't afford payroll, I have a very limited, not skill set, but very limited tools to help you that if you called me 6 months ago when things were not great, but not catastrophical, we could have saved it much easier. Does that resonate?
It totally resonates. And that's what I find with the difference between a bootstrap startup and a funded startup. A funded startup spends on vanity.
Revenue is vanity.
And a bootstrap startup spends on what they absolutely need to grow the business. And I am a big fan of bootstrap.
Me too.
I don't care where you're at. If you look at somebody like Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, right? He bootstraps every single one of his he will walk to the floor and go, why are we spending that much money? Why are we putting 6 bolts in the system when 4 bolts will work? Who made that decision? Why? Get them here now. And if you can't answer it, someone's getting their ass fired.
Right.
How is it that Elon can do that and the rest of us can't?
They can. And it's the beauty of like a bootstrap business. Every decision needs to be profitable, because if it's not a profitable decision, it comes out of my pocket. So I found that a lot of times founders of bootstrap companies are a little bit more weary when they decide to deploy capital or to spend money, which is fantastic because it goes to show they do the thinking behind it. Is it worth it? Am I going to see my money again? Or there's more back and forth. Constraint is good in that context, right? If you had $1 million to spend, you would spend it. It's much easier to spend, not necessarily wisely. What book are you looking for?
There's a book back there called Stretch.
It's
literally about that. Bootstrap, exactly what you're talking about. It's reminding me of that.
I want to say one more thing. So companies think that they get into $2, $3, $4 million, and then they need to get a loan or need to start getting capital or I need to grow. And I think that it's going to really resonate with you. You can grow from your own cash flow. It's a much healthier way. You're going to grow slower, but you're going to be much more profitable. And the way to do this, going back to the beginning, is by doing less. Saying no to a lot of quote unquote opportunities, finding what you do extremely well and what is the most profitable part. It's like the intersection between what I love to do, what you talked about, like the fun and the profitable. Find that intersection and eliminate everything else. And if you're good at what you do and you found the lever or the core, just rinse and repeat.
That shiny object over there.
So how do you avoid that shiny object, Rocky? I found a way. I'm curious to find your way.
I haven't figured out how to do that with most business owners. Keeping them grounded is not easy. So when I look at the EOS system, it's the visionary and the integrator.
Sure.
I tell every integrator, your number one role, believe it or not, is to keep the visionary grounded and to say no to their wild ideas.
And yes, I found that the way to do this is to create a shared source of truth. Here's what I mean by that. Take the visionary and the integrator and maybe a couple of the leadership team, put them in a room, present them with questions on a canvas. Who is the single segment that we're focusing on? What's the single product that we're focusing on the next 12 months? What are our core competencies that we want to double down on? What is our high-level marketing strategy, conversion strategy, production strategy, and retention strategy? And just have them answer. In my framework, it's 18 questions. And they answer those together. And once they answer those together and they put it on the one document that replaces the vision traction organizer, this becomes a source of truth for the next 12 months. And if you have a source of truth, which is something you can go back and reference, that eliminates the shiny objects. It gives the integrator or a C-suite member or a leadership team member the tool to say, hey, but we agreed that this is what we're doing. So are we changing it or are you deviating from the plan? It's like almost like this is the plan that we agreed on. It's in black and white. It's on one page. You bought into it when we did it. Are you changing it? And once they're presented with this like source of truth, you can gives the ability to start saying no with confidence. Does that make sense?
It gives them permission to say no. So I agree with everything you say. The one thing I usually do is I will sit down with the business owner and I'll go, okay, let's just run the math. And we use those three drivers and the levers. I go, tell me all the math. And then the answer comes out at the end, how much cash they'll make. And then I look at them, I go, what do you think? And the answer is obvious. It's either hell yes or hell no, or maybe not. And then I say, well, either figure out how to make it better or compare this to what you're doing and say what makes sense. Sometimes you just need to let them fail.
Failing
And
is a
I'm
concept.
learning that that's okay, but let's have a controlled failure. Meaning, if I'm a $3 million business, I can afford a $30,000 loss on trying something. It's not the end of the world. I still survive, but I learn a lesson. And sometimes you got to do that. What I try and tell them in those situations is, let's try it. You want to do it. Tell me what is going to be the cutoff. In other words, how long and what milestone do we say, hey, this didn't work? Let's define it up front so there's no emotion 3 months from now so that we can decide whether we go, no go.
Yes. Failing is a part of business. It's not even failing, it's just testing, right? It's
Testing.
learning. The key is that most companies test without an hypothesis, meaning that they test without being clear on what they're trying to test and what is success and what is failure. So, for example, in my example, let's say that we agreed that we're going to focus on this specific type of client, and we go and we test it and we do a marketing campaign and we try. But when we get information, because we've made a decision and we're testing everything against that decision, we can start seeing if our activities, if our decision was right. And what you want to optimize is for the original decision that you've made. When I made a decision to invest in this line of product, I've made a decision to invest in this type of client. And then I would go and I run an activity, an initiative activity, I spend money on it. If I do the activity without being clear on what my original decision, what my upstream decision was, as I get more information, I don't know really what to do with it. But when I made it clear that I'm trying to validate that this is the right marketing strategy, or this is the right segment, or this is the right product that I want to bring to market, then I put money in, I am more in tune with the result.
That makes total sense.
Yeah. It's a missing piece that people they're not explicit around their decision. That's the whole, just be explicit. Even if you don't have all the information, make some clear decision, put them on paper, have everybody row in the same direction. So it's not that your marketing person is going to work on a side track and your operation. Everybody's is working on the same thing, even your all, and then see what happens. And if it fails, that's fine, because it's learning, because you have put not all of your eggs, but you put enough effort to say this wasn't an effort problem. There's something else.
We're working on our business instead of in our business. And that's literally what it comes down to.
Yes.
I know you've created a ton of free materials. There's not even an email before them. You just give it all away. If people would like to learn more about how to do this, how to find you, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, so the company is called Fractional Partners. And if you go on playbook.fractional.partners, you will get access. I don't even, as you said, I don't need an email, because I want companies to use it. You will get access to the planning system that sits on top EOS. So it's basically a system about financial, strategic, and operational clarity. And the idea here, you want to create one page, one source of truth for each one source of truth for your finances, not your P&L. P&L is a part of it, a larger source of truth, and then one source of truth for your strategy, and then one source of truth for your operation. And the system is just, how do you actually answer these questions? How do you decide what product you want to double down on? How do you find what is the right lever to pull? Use it. It's free. It's open. I monetize by helping companies implement this in their own companies. But I believe that if you are smart and dedicated and able to pause for a moment, take this and take that really like a gift and try it. Implement it in your business, just like a Profit First, that you can do it from a book, or you can hire someone to help you. Same idea. Here's the book. The book is free. Try. And if you need help, give me a call. That's the idea.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Rocky. It was fun.
Thanks for listening to this unedited video of the Profit Answer Man podcast. If you'd like to catch the full episode and learn more about what we do, check us out at profitcomesfirst.com. We also go through the Profit First book in each and every chapter in the beginning episodes of the podcast, so check those out as well. Thanks for listening, and here's to you having a more profitable and growing business.